Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to CCS, the Conference Call Podcast After Dark. I'm back with co-host Somber for episode 3, joining us here live from the show. It's going to be a fun, exciting season. We're halfway through. Somber, how's it going?
Most competitive that it's been. It's going to be an amazing season, and we're seeing it kind of unfold throughout this opening half. And I'm very excited to see how teams finish things out.
Yeah, got you unmuted there. Sorry, Sleeper. Thanks for pointing that out. Missed the first 10 seconds of that, but we got you back here. For me, I think it's exciting, obviously, to kick off yet another season of CCS. But now a lot of leagues across the country are starting to get underway, and I think some are still registration open at this point in time. But the semester's in full blow now, so we're really starting to see a lot of these top teams start to play a ton of games. And look at Akron and what the job they've done the last year across CCS now into this fall, looking to be they're ranked on a lot of people's top 32 boards throughout this semester, so that's a team to look out for later on.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Bepic and TJ, when they're kind of going over their top 32, their top 40, when they release the little bit of extended list, Akron Gold is consistently in the national top 20. So them being dominant in other leagues as well as CCS, I mean, it kind of holds up to their track record. They're the first ever to three-peat. They're looking for a four-peat. But I think that right now in CCS, they are the team to beat. There's a couple teams that are climbing up the ladder. But yeah, overall, I think that there's been a lot of jumping around. We were talking mainly last night into this afternoon uh, about a bunch of different teams of kind of like what we're expecting versus what they've put up so far versus what's happened, upsets and all that. Where there's so many factors going into this season with roster moves, programs going from club to varsity. We're seeing improved rosters. We're seeing crazy results. We're seeing teams from last season just improve. It's been a crazy season so far to catch up on. And again, this is just now starting into the fall. I think, like you said, all of these leagues have started. We might be waiting on one more to start up doing their placements, but we're in full swing right now, and we're getting Rocket League on full display. I was talking to Knight last week. Even teams like UNC Charlotte, they're still kind of getting in their rhythm. So now that we're hitting week 3, we're well into September, we're heading into October. Teams are going to start hitting their strides. So if we've had this much content so far to open things up throughout the month of September, October is going to be even better. We're just going to keep getting better and better until we hit that national stage, and it's going to be cinema, man. It's going to be great.
That second weekend of November is going to be a big weekend here at CCS, and obviously, RLCS schedule on top of us, and we had those changes go into effect already, but, it can't control that side of, the league, I guess, because it's RLCS and they have a, priority. But, we're halfway through the regular season at this point. If your season has not been off the way you want it, you got 3 weeks left to get your crap together and, get your resume as good as you can get it prior to the selection process by the selection committee. And we're halfway through the season. These rankings are tough to do, and again, when this committee sits down in a couple weeks and builds a bracket, it's going to take a lot of discussion and a lot of time, as it always does, and it's hard to do. And it takes a lot of time, and it takes really a lot of thought, thinking and everything, and it's a fun process, but it is difficult to go through and rank 64 teams in a field where it's very, very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it before we went live. This is my first season being part of the selection committee and helping with the top 25 rankings and getting my 2 cents put in there. But I think that a lot of people go into basically any type of ranking system, whether it comes from college basketball, college football, power rankings for pro sports, whatever it may be. And they look at it and they say, there's a committee behind this, there's people behind it. Yeah, it's probably tough. I don't think that people realize how tough it actually is, especially when here at CCS, we're limiting it down to a top 25, because realistically at any given point in time, there's 30 teams that can make a bid to be in that top 25. So it gets really down to the nitty gritty and you have to make some tough decisions. And we're seeing a little bit of parity between some people in the selection committee. So when it comes down to making the selection for the big bracket at the end of the season, at the end of the fall, I have a feeling that there's going to be some tough conversations to be had despite some amazing seasons.
Deep Expressor, the Collegiate Conference Series, is a collegiate Rocket League where teams compete across their NCAA conferences, just like you'll see in regular college sports. They'll have their own conference tournaments followed by a March Madness-esque bracket at the end of the season. And, Snobber, when we get to the end of the season, we have that selection meeting and we build this bracket. It takes a long time. I think when we first did the 64 team field, it took us like 3.5 hours. I think we casted a game at 10 Eastern, was the final, Atlantic Sun tournament final that week. And that was like a Saturday night, I think, or a Sunday night. We didn't get off the line until like about 2 a.m. and we had that bracket done. It was a long process to get that first 64 team bracket done. Where again, that bracket was cinema. We had 2 BO7 reverse sweeps in that bracket. Akron won it all. Oregon played very well in that tournament. Colorado nearly made back-to-back national title games. That was a cinema bracket, but nonetheless, we're halfway through the season. Week 3 has just finished and wrapped up here, and moving on to week 4. I mean, again, for me, Texas Tech still at the top of the Big 12 is a pretty. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Texas Tech, I believe we saw some of them in non-conference, if I am not mistaken, on the broadcast. They looked like an impressive team. They were kind of a team to me that I figured that they're maybe going to be behind West Virginia, maybe Utah, who they're off to a 1-1 start. They're not looking like Utah like we usually have seen them kind of perform. But Texas Tech climbing up, they're neck and neck right now with Arizona State, which is a great team to be kind of right up there with. But yeah, man, like Texas Tech, a big shocker coming out of that conference, being 4-0, only dropping 4 games. And again, they're right up there with Arizona State, who is a top team in the nation right now. They're always going to be kind of a threat in the brackets, and I think Texas Tech kind of step up to the plate makes that conference that much more competitive, and it's going to be an interesting storyline to look at the back half of this season to see if Texas Tech is able to keep that up. As it looks like their strength of schedule gets a little bit harder towards the end of the season, but should be able to keep things up to be one of the top dogs right behind Arizona State.
Yeah, I'm seeing a 7-1 finish for the Red Raiders here. So they'll take on the Cougars at Houston this week, followed by Arizona State next week, which could be for number 1 in the Big 12 tournament next week if Tech and Arizona State both go undefeated the rest of the way. But Arizona State still has Arizona remaining on the schedule in their rivalry week, so that's going to be a big game for the Sun Devils and a chance for Arizona to step back up to the top of the country in the rankings. But nonetheless, we'll get into the rankings later on in the show. But week 3 was very, very interesting and very fun to watch. And it's something also, and you mentioned the selection committee. It's tough being on it and sitting on it. And there's been the NCAA selection committee is an example of its own. They've got so many different regulations and rules on how things work. And for example, last year's March Madness men's basketball selection committee, the committee chair was the athletic director at the University of North Carolina. And North Carolina was the final team in the field selected to be in the tournament. But anytime a team with a representative on the selection committee is being discussed, that member has to leave the room. And so, now they've added even more rules regarding that situation for this year. So it gets regulated, and there's tons of different rules that go into it, and it's tough to sit there and not be able to help because your team is being discussed, and you can't control your own team's destiny in the selection committee process, and that'll also go into effect for CCS. There are 2 people on the committee that are in this league; they will not be allowed in the room when discussing their team.
Yeah, and I share the sentiment that that's a tough thing to do, because I feel like a lot of times you can, at least if you're here with us, I feel like a lot of people on the selection committee, they can be fairly unbiased. They can, for laughs, right? They can be biased, but I think for the most part, they rate their own teams. They talk about things fairly realistically. So it's tough to not have that when you feel like you may have still some kind of a voice of reason to you. But I do understand that whatever little bit of bias, whatever actually whether you want to admit it or not, there's going to be a little bit in the back of your head. So it makes sense having them kind of be away for a moment while that conversation comes up. And having maybe some people that have less stake in it. I think that's more what it is you could be empirical about stuff, but you're always going to maybe hedge one way or the other based on your own personal interests. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting when it comes down to selection time, man. We've already had plenty of conversations just through the top 25. I imagine that it's going to be even more chaotic and even more of a we'll say lengthy conversation when it comes to picking the top 64 for the bracket.
Absolutely. And to me, there's nothing I hate more in college athletics than the damn transfer portal. It is completely ruined what college sports stands for and what it is. And now we've seen that come into full effect in esports. And just last year in season 4, the Mavericks of Omaha, led by Decagon, they went to the round of 32 after knocking off number 10 Bowling Green in the opening round of that tournament. Then Decagon hit the portal. Now he's back in CCS with the Antelopes of Grand Canyon. And there are 2 other players that I believe are going into the portal after this season. I will not break that news live here because I'm going to let those players, make that announcement themselves. But I have been made aware of 2 transfers potentially happening after this season. And again, I will not say who they are just for privacy purposes. But, it really has ruined college athletics. But it has made esports quite interesting because we are seeing a lot of these players start to transfer. And, Pittsburgh lost Duke to the portal last season. After this last season, he's now at York College of Pennsylvania. So they've lost their star player in Duke, and I know other players have also left their respective schools and gone elsewhere. So it has affected teams at a pretty large rate here.
Yeah, I mean, even students just leaving the school and focusing on maybe just education, focusing on being closer to family, trying to figure out what school really is right for them. I know the big thing going into this for at least CCS, or one of the big things going into this season for CCS for me at least, was Pigeon now being gone off of JMU. Now JMU, they have had a pretty good season. They're 9-0, undefeated throughout, and they're still a really great team, but they're not having to kind of do the whole, okay, let's find a replacement, get an incoming freshman. You're trying to play with someone who may not have that much high level competitive experience, so you're trying to get them involved in systems, get the comms up. It's a big struggle, but it does make for interesting Rocket League. I will say, as opposed to regular, college sports or more traditional college sports where it's you just throw NIL money and hope for the best super team to come out and you win some games. I think with esports, it just makes everything much more competitive because unless you're at the very tippity top end, your Baylors, your Akron Blues, your Concord Esports, your Cumberlands, like those types of teams, St. Clair, like those type of programs. I think when you get down to this level where it's a lot of the Power 5 schools, you're still rocking with 18 to 1900 rosters. So kind of have a revolving door there. You're not losing out on too much, but it is always going to be a factor of who's coming and going. What are the rosters going to look like from semester to semester, year to year? I think that also with Pitt, like they haven't really lost a step. Losing Duke, it is sad to see because Duke was a person that a lot of people loved on that Pitt team, but Pitt, they're 3-0 start, they're 9-0, they haven't dropped a game yet in the ACC. So I think that Pitt is probably not missing out on Duke too much right now.
Yeah, I think Nitrous is the perfect example of the transfer portal in Rocket League. Went from Northwood, and now is at Penn State. I don't know if he got a degree from Northwood. I don't know if he technically ported or not from transferred officially, or if he just is now doing a master's at Penn State. I'm not quite sure, but he used to be at Northwood. I think he even won a CRO national title at Northwood as well. Now he's at Penn State with Fahad and Kiliax. But again, the portal is the portal. It is what it is. I think again, it's ruined college sports. Now you have schools being able to pay athletes and NIL and all that fun stuff, and now at the esports level, some schools can't provide scholarships, some can even provide full rides. So that also goes into effect for decision making for a lot of these players looking to go to college or looking to transfer.
Yeah, I mean, if we're in the talks of NIL and that becomes a thing in esports, any esports program, I am a great sub. I'm 1540 peak. I'm a real hustle guy. I'm a glue guy. Great locker room presence. So hit me up. I still got some athletic eligibility if you want to throw some NIL my way. But yeah, I mean, it is tough. The collegiate esports landscape is very rough. We're seeing programs go from being a varsity program and then getting knocked back down to club programs, and they're getting their funding taken away. no longer able to offer out scholarships. I know a few universities, they're at least still making good on the scholarship part, at least for the incoming semester of people who were promised it. There's some stuff on the back end, but we live in a very tumultuous time for collegiate esports, because there's not to get into anything political, not to have any hot takes. It's just a fact that schools are experiencing funding cuts and budgetary things in terms of funding from local, state, federal government. So they have to make decisions. And if we're being honest, a lot of these teams, esports is not a priority funding thing. Yeah, it's nice to have a varsity program, and yeah, it's nice to get these players on scholarships, but at the end of the day, a lot of these teams, their school just doesn't have the budget in them to support them. So when scholarships are a factor, the good players are going to gravitate one way or the other towards scholarships and being able to compete and have their education supported at the same time, versus a club team that's just trying to scrap it out.
I mean, yeah, I think Illinois State and St. Louis are perfect examples of what you just talked about, and I think both. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe both of those two schools lost university support due to budget cuts. They had to shut the programs down. I think they're now just clubs now, I believe. I could be wrong. I know Illinois State's back competing. I don't know if they've gotten that situation resolved or if they're just a club now, but I believe both those two programs have gone from programs to clubs now. But again, budget cuts are unfortunate, real thing that happens in this world, and a lot of people lose jobs because of it. But and it affects esports as well at the collegiate levels. Again, collegiate esports are probably one of the lowest level priorities for most universities that don't see a revenue income from it. So those two schools, again, they're both small as well, but they are D1, but they are still small, and so they've lost. They probably, I guess, I'd imagine, lost some money and decided to cut it. But it is what it is, and it does affect these athletes, and it affects these students and that are on full rides or scholarships and now have to look elsewhere for school because they can't pay for it, and they're trying to get scholarships to pay for school, and now they don't have that opportunity because the school cut the program.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of speak on something locally to me is UNC Charlotte. It has been phenomenal to see them go from club to being a varsity program at Charlotte. They are no longer Niner Esports. They are just the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. They have a phenomenal esports lab. They have all the support from the university. They get funding for their travels to LANs. So I know that they're going to be going to, or reportedly they're going to DreamHack Dallas. I don't know if they're going out to Scenic City this weekend. There's a couple. Atlanta. DreamHack Atlanta.
Am I missing something?
DreamHack Dallas is a far ways away. I think that they're going out to Atlanta. I don't know if they're doing Scenic City. There's a couple lands here in the Carolinas that they're going to now have actual funding for. It's not just going to be them and their families pitching in to go get them a rental van to drive them down wherever. So it's nice to see that, but unfortunately, with having that new budget for lands and having this big fancy new esports lab and dedicated lab time for them to play their games and all the support from the university, the funds had to be diverted elsewhere, and they lost their coach who has helped them kind of come together and be the glue as these players still are learning to play together. They've been together for I believe a year now, going on a year and a half. But a coach does wonders for a team. So them now having to lose some of that, it's still a give and take, even when the budget is there, of what the university deems is worthwhile for their funding and where they're able to allocate funds. So it's tough all around. It's never going to be a perfect solution until collegiate esports is more legitimized. And I think that definitely schools like Maryville, schools like Winthrop, schools like Concord, Cumberland, even those schools who are coming in and they're having like Overwatch 2 and Valorant and League of Legends success and having pro players and having a pipeline, I think is going to add to some of the legitimacy and kind of just showing how dominant they are nationally. I think that's going to do wonders down the line if more schools can kind of get their eyes open to that and see those as examples of how the program can run and how you can make this a legitimate pipeline into pro while also giving these guys phenomenal educations, and hopefully kind of get that budget up to where all the nice to haves and the luxuries for an esports program can come to fruition. But right now we're at a very tough time, and it's just kind of weather the storm and hope for the best and try to see the light at the end of the tunnel, which I think a lot of these schools and a lot of these players are. But it's going to get tiresome at some point, and I hope that there's a change coming soon down the pipeline for these players to be able to be comfortable playing collegiate esports and not have the big what if every semester, and kind of think that this is a short-term thing, and hopefully can be able to come in as freshmen and be able to feel confident about being part of that program until their senior year, which I think is also a part of the whole transfer portal thing starting to affect esports. Is opportunities pop up and you're going to go hop on the more sure thing opportunity, right? So it's going to be a long road ahead, but I hope to see that the transfer portal not only improves it for collegiate esports, but makes it more fun and competitive. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things progress throughout this year.
Absolutely agreed. I again, we spent enough time talking in the portal. The transfer portal is what it is. It's affected college sports. It's affecting esports, and a lot of people are starting to utilize it for scholarship opportunities, which, can't knock them. Then go get your bag.
Yeah.
You're a hell of a player. If you're getting offered, money to go to school, why not take it rather than have to pay for it yourself? So I can't knock anybody on a scholarship. Congrats to them. Hopefully, hope for all the best that it works out. But now onto the top 25 rankings. A lot of people always ask for these, and I've been getting spammed out the wazoo lately as asking where the rankings are. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they are here. Your CCS Season 7 Week 3 Top 25 poll presented by the Sideline Sports Network. Your top 25, and a couple of shockers for me is, South Carolina's rated above Clemson after losing to Clemson just 2 weeks ago. Nebraska's ranked for the first time since Season 4. Arizona is at 25, which is extremely low for the Wildcats. Arizona State is very high. But these rankings are tough to do, and a lot of these teams are so close in the rankings.
I think that, at least for me personally, I don't have too much move around that I want to do with the top 10. I think that all of the teams in there are kind of confirmed top 10, both this season so far and kind of what we've seen in previous seasons. I think that where it gets really tough to start to rank who's where and be very subjective about it is the 11 through 25. Like it's a majority of this list is so hard to kind of pin things down, and we're going to see a lot of teams jump, a lot of teams slip. It's a very volatile right now with it being the halfway point, because we only have 2, maybe 3 games to go off of for a lot of these teams, and we're trying to kind of pre-jump where we think they're going to be going into the next week of season play, what they've kind of been able to do. I know for me personally, like I personally had South Carolina over Clemson, and that mainly is just because Clemson is still a very up and down team. I'm not convinced yet. The win over South Carolina does nice to get them into the top 25, but I don't think that it puts them over them. South Carolina is always going to be a team that's going to be competitive, especially with SJT and Og really like going and grinding this season. And I think that also, like, seeing James Madison rise, they're undefeated, and then Buds being in the same conference, now being into the top 25, jumping from unranked straight to 21 is a huge leap. I think that over the next 2 weeks, we're going to see this list kind of settle out, but there has been a lot of shifting, and it's been quite the interesting conversation behind closed doors on getting this top 25 put together.
Absolutely. And I think as well, I mean, this is your week 3 poll. There will be rankings for week 4 and week 5. There will not be rankings for week 6, as we will show a bracket on stream at this point in time, where the committee will have a bracket put together prior to the conference tournaments kicking off that following Monday, on I believe it's Monday, October 13th, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, Monday, October 13th. You'll see the first edition of the bracket prior to conference tournaments kicking off, and there will be no more rankings after that. That will be the only bracket you see prior to the official bracket revealed in the selection show. So you've got 2 weeks or so to get your ranking where you want to get it, and then after that, it's all in the hands of the selection committee as to what will happen and what your fate will be. But these rankings, again, there was a lot of teams in this list that are ranked high on some people's lists and they're ranked low on some people's lists. There's not a very big margin of standard deviation when it comes to a lot of these rankings for these teams outside of the top 10. So again, you're a lot closer, 11 to 25 than you really think you are.
Yeah, I think that when you see 11 to 25, like comparing Virginia Tech to Arizona, that gap is is very small. So it just goes to show how many teams were trying to squeeze in between that gap and how close everything is. Basically, the way that I was kind of looking, I guess it was more so for the like 13 through 25 on my list was teams that are going to beat the team below them. For example, here, I think that James Madison, when they're playing their best, could beat any of the teams below them. Obviously, there's going to be some argument there, but it's not by a wide margin. These are all very close. I think that it's again the gap between your 11 and your 25 is much smaller than the number may appear. I feel like teams are going to look at them, especially a team like South Carolina. They probably hold themselves very high, especially with their win over Tennessee in the summer. They're going to say, well, if Tennessee's 12, then why are we not 10? I think that it's really just the margins are so slim when we're trying to make it right now because there hasn't been anything that really, unlike past seasons, it feels like, where there's big differentiators between, your top 5 versus your 6 through 10 versus your 11 through 15, so on and so on. Those big gaps aren't as present anymore when you get to the different tiers of ranking. It really is just you kind of have your pretty solid top 10, and even then there could be some shuffling, and then everyone else is just who passes the eye test better, who shows a little bit better results, who's had a slightly better history over one another, and trying to figure out the ranking there. So this season has been probably the hardest to be a first time newcomer to the selection committee for top 25s for myself, because it just seems too competitive to call some of these placements. I think I switched around my 15 to 25. I probably had 4 or 5 different teams go in and then get cut from it, and everything mixed around. I went over and probably took me a couple hours to put my list together, and at least an hour of that was just figuring out who I was going to put in the bottom 10 of my list, because there's too many teams that I feel deserve to be here.
Yeah, I had a couple teams. I made my list last night. I mean, it took like an hour or so to do, but then I changed it this morning and took some teams off my list and put some new teams on my list. And schools like Grand Canyon are no longer ranked. A&M is no longer ranked after now suffering 3 consecutive losses from the 2 non-conference games and losing to Mississippi State to start SEC play last week, which was, by the way, shocking. That was probably an upset that probably shouldn't have happened, but it did. That's a pretty concerning start to the season for A&M, but I know that's a good team. They'll get it figured out, hopefully. But these rankings are cutthroat. They're tough. And again, I love the Big 12. I always have supported the Big 12 and CCS. I think it's one of the best leagues in the country behind the Big 10 this season. But, the Big 12 is struggling. There's no more Iowa State, no more Cincinnati. I can't get into why Iowa State's not in CCS right now. It's personal with one of their players. He's dealing with some IRL stuff. So hopefully they'll come back in the spring. Cincinnati will return in the spring, so the league will get better moving forward. But right now in the fall, the Big 12 is just not what it used to be. It's not the same old prestige it used to have. So yeah, that's why you're not going to see a lot of Big 12 teams ranked all that high right now. I think you only have 3 schools in this list ranked in the Big 12. Arizona State, Arizona, only 2 Big 12 schools ranked now. I know Texas Tech received some votes, but they are not ranked. The Big 10's got 5 or 6 teams ranked, but these rankings are hard, and when we get into the selection process, it gets even tougher deciding the at-larges. Is again 23 schools will receive automatic qualifiers from their conference tournaments, and 41 teams will be selected at large. But it's tough to do, and these rankings are not easy at all. And again, in 3 weeks, when we build this bracket and show you guys, we will be taking questions right after. So that's going to be time to come harass us and ask us why you're where you are, why you aren't in the field. So that's your opportunity to ask us questions and see our reasoning and understanding. But these rankings are tough. It's not easy at all, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it really does, and especially like getting input from other people on the committee and kind of like trying to be open to other opinions. I feel like all of us who are kind of chatting, we are all fairly level-headed enough to be able to take some criticism on our list, or maybe take some reasoning as to who we have higher or lower. But at the end of the day, these are all personal rankings that we come together with an aggregate of where to put of who to put where, and it's more of a traditional who receives votes, where are they most commonly placed, and kind of put an average out. But yeah, again, there's going to be a lot of teams. I believe that there was, when I last looked at the sheet, there was 5 or 6 different teams that made the cut, or at least got votes, or were kind of put as a footnote of like, hey, I'm putting a vote in that they could be in here, but they're just outside the cut. I know I put a couple at the bottom of mine of like, these are teams that I really struggled, that I wanted to put up here, but I just couldn't find a way to fit them in where another team maybe deserved the positioning more. But yeah, it's tough. It really is. And even you think when it comes to the 64 teams, like, oh, it gets easier, right? Well, 64, like you said, 23 of those spots are guaranteed from winners. So that then cuts it down to what? 41. You got to pick 41 teams out of the remaining 140, that, and take into account how they perform postseason, how they performed in non-conference, how they performed during the regular season, what they currently look like compared to other teams that may be trying to take a spot from them. And it becomes that much harder, despite the number of teams you're picking growing. It becomes a lot harder because the stakes are so much higher. It's like right now, the top 25, it's just kind of like what we think. You can argue about it, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really impact much going into it. Other than maybe some prestige if you lose and you're a top ranked opponent, and your opponent that week is unranked, it might buy you a little bit of stock. But again, that mainly matters to us for the rankings. But when it comes down to the top 64 bracket, that's when things actually matter, and it's going to be that little bit extra bit of circumstance to it, going to make it that much harder. And again, it's going to be very interesting with how competitive we've seen things and how slim the margins have been with just doing the top 25. It's going to be so much tighter to try to figure out who the remaining 41 picked teams going into that top 64 are going to be.
I mean, right, and again, there's like 185 school teams in this league, I believe. So again, you take out your 23 conference tournament champions, and you have to select 41 of the remaining 162. So it's still a very large pool of teams to select from. So about 25% of the remaining field will be put in the tournament. The rest, 75%, will be left out. So it is tough, and a lot of schools obviously know they're not going to make it prior to what their season has been. So, but there will be a lot of schools on the cut line this season. I think the cut line will be even more competitive than it ever has been before this season, with how stacked the league is, and how much better a lot of these teams that used to not be so good now are starting to really kind of get there. So it's exciting to think about. And again, I want to leak stuff for next year so bad, but I can't. But there's still a couple of big changes coming to CCS in the 2026-27 school year regarding the tournament. I want to leak them so bad, but I'm not going to. But it's going to be super fun. The selection show is about to get ramped up next year with what's coming afterwards. So, but I want to leak it so bad, but I'm not going to. But it's going to be so much fun. But moving along to the standings, I mean, again, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but Texas Tech at the top of the Big 12. I mean, what a turnaround for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, and I think with the kind of the Big 12 losing some of their premier talent, with especially with Cincinnati leaving, I think that Cincinnati was a big riser from the spring. Seeing Texas Tech kind of step up to the plate and be that second, and kind of break up the Arizona supremacy that was looking like it was going to be on the rise in the Big 12. I think that they get a little bit of a rougher schedule. I know Houston is currently sitting at 0-4, but they're going to be a tough opponent to go up against. Houston is going to be a test for Texas Tech. You said 7-1. I can see 6-2 just because I think Houston could grab an upset win if Texas Tech isn't prepared for it. But we'll see, man. Like Big 12, yeah, the Texas Tech has been such a such a huge riser, and it's nice to see because, like you said, the last time we were kind of on the topic of Texas Tech, they used to be up at the top end of CCS, and they've kind of fallen flat and kind of gone into the shadows of the Big 12, especially with some more premier squads showing up. But now with that gap being there at the number 2 spot behind Arizona State, who I think were the favorites out of the Big 12 no matter what, Texas Tech has stepped up and filled that role very nicely.
Yeah, Texas Tech hasn't played a postseason game in CCS since season 2, Somber. That was the last time they played a postseason game in CCS. So it's been very, very long, since spring of 2023, I believe. So it's been quite some time, almost 2 years since they played a postseason game. And I forgot to mention on the last topic here, 5 teams did receive votes but were not ranked. That being Grand Canyon at 26, Texas Tech at 27, Mississippi State at 28, Texas A&M at 29, and Northeastern at 30. So 5 teams did get votes but were not ranked by the committee. But back to the standing series, that's past topic. But again, there's still 3 undefeated teams in the Big 12. West Virginia following at 4th. Those 4 teams currently, your 4 teams receiving double byes. But again, still those top teams have to play each other. Tech is going to play West Virginia. Arizona plays ASU later on in the semester. Virginia Tech, Pitt. The ACC still has 5 teams unbeaten. The SEC has 4. The Big Ten's got 3. And Illinois' got 1 loss. Again, it's very cutthroat in the Big Ten. A lot of these power programs and power conferences in CCS are going to be tough to come out on top in. And we've seen that in full effect in the conference tournaments.
Yeah, even Indiana with their 1 loss on the season so far, being in 5-2 number 1 Michigan State, Indiana is going to be a great team to watch out. I think that truly the Big Ten is kind of the hell group, right? There's always one of them. And I think that the Big Ten is definitely that, with Michigan State, Purdue, and Maryland all being at the top undefeated. They're always teams that are going to be lethal when it comes down to a bracket. But Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, even Penn State now dropping to 2-2. Penn State has the talent behind them. It doesn't matter, as long as they make it to the postseason, they can make something happen. Nebraska seems to be on the rise, which I know all of us behind the scenes that want as much peak cinema as possible. Nebraska being back up on the rise is a great thing to see. And Indiana and Illinois, they're gonna be top contenders as well. Like the Big Ten, it really is just the conference to beat right now, kind of top to bottom in terms of quality and depth of each of their teams that are going to be going into conference playoffs. But the SEC is very competitive as well. Florida, I know they dropped a little bit in the rankings. Texas A&M, they've had some really, really disappointing losses. But again, SEC can give the Big Ten a run for their money in terms of depth, but I think the Big Ten is still a top premier conference, and it's going to be interesting to see where everything shakes out, especially through the back half of this season, as we're going to see a lot more competitive matchups, especially with Indiana and Penn State playing this week. That's going to be a absolutely massive matchup to keep an eye on for this week upcoming.
Yeah, but there's no depth in the country like the Big Ten. There just isn't. And right now the Big Ten's the best seed in CCS. It just has been for a while now, and probably always will be. But the Big 12 used to be the prestige in the CCS. They had 6 teams ranked inside the top 10 back in season 4 in the week 4 poll. So they've had their own run of success. They won 3 straight national titles, with Kansas winning once, Colorado winning once, and they also, I forget, they had one other. They won 3 seasons in a row. So again, they were dominant. And in CCS when they first joined, they won their first 3 seasons being a part of the league, Somber. So again, the Big 12 used to be the prestige conference in CCS. Now it's the Big 10. It's got so much stuff: Penn State, Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State. The list goes on. But it's tough to win those power leagues, man, because those conference tournaments are also big. They've got double buys and single buys, and you have to play through a gauntlet just to win it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, especially because Big Ten teams tend to be ones that go on runs. Of course, Nebraska comes to mind, but Ohio State has done some funny things in bracket play before. So if Ohio State is able to turn things around in the back half of the season and push their way up, Ohio State could be another team that you don't want to see in a gauntlet style bracket. And then, of course, you're always going to be keeping your eyes on the top dogs out in the Big Ten. But like you said, when you talk about depth, you can't have a better argument than the Big Ten. They are the premier conference in CCS right now. They are going to be for quite a while, until we maybe see some other teams pop in, and we see maybe some new incoming players, or maybe possible transfers maybe to the other teams. But I think right now it's Big Ten, Big Gap, and then SEC, and then kind of everywhere else where they fall. But yeah, like the Big Ten really is just so good, but it's disappointing that over in the MAC you're going to get mactioned on with Akron Gold in grand finals anyways. So it doesn't matter your depth and how tough it is. When it comes to national play, Akron is still going to be that big bad boogeyman.
Well, across the power conferences, there are a couple of big time games happening this week, and that starts off in the Big 12. Arizona takes on Utah. Somber pick for that one.
Utah has been disappointing me a little bit. I think that they will be able to turn it around, but not against Arizona. I think Arizona is going to keep dominating. They're 9-1 through their opening games of the season. Give me Arizona over Utah.
I'll take the Cats in that one as well. Again, I think Utah, again, they're playing in PEC now, and they're taking that league a little bit more serious than CCS. They said they won't be taking CCS as serious anymore, but it's like I'm going to expect Arizona to come out on top of that one and get back in the top 25 a little bit higher, but I wouldn't be shocked if Utah does win it. Their fans are also some of the craziest fans I've seen, so again, they can rally, but I think I'm going to take Arizona to win that one in 4 over Utah. Moving on to the ACC, Pittsburgh takes on Clemson in a week 4 clash. I'll take the Tigers in that one.
Yeah, give me Clemson. I talked with Enzo. I had an interview with Enzo last week, and they're really trying to dial in their play style right now. I think that Pitt is going to be a perfect opponent for them to play a little bit more comfortably and maybe try some new things out. But I still think that Clemson, system going through some reworks or not, I think that just the raw skill behind them, I think that that's an easy win there for Clemson.
I think it's going to be close. They've always played each other close in CCS. It's always game 5. I'll take the Tigers 1 in 5 this time. But moving on to the SEC, unbeaten Florida, and the SEC takes on unbeaten Missouri. A game as old as time in CCS Somber. It's always in the schedule. Florida, Mizzou. Who do you got?
Man. This is going to be tough because I feel like this matchup kind of determines what the discourse around either of their team is going to be when it comes to not just rankings but kind of projecting them onto a bracket. I want to say Missouri, just because Florida, their roster got put together over the summer. There's maybe not as much chemistry getting put up there. Missouri is a really high-powered offense, and seeing what pressure did to Florida with NIU over the summer with that same roster that they're currently playing in CCS with, pressure did not do them well. And I think that Missouri is going to be able to put up a ton of it. I think it's going to be close, but give me Mizzou in that matchup.
And how many games?
5.
5?
I want to see 5. I want Florida to show me that they can hang at the top again.
Yeah, I mean, we got to watch those two teams go at it in the regular season. I called the first time it happened with Bepic. I called that game with him, and I think it was week 3 of season 5 back in the spring when Missouri first played in the league, and it was a sweep for the Tigers, but all 3 games are 1-0. There were only 3 goals scored that entire series. Every game was 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. So, again, those teams are close. That sweep didn't do that series justice, but then you go into the conference tournament, and Missouri wins it in 6. And I called that one with Dronis. And again, Missouri is 2-0 against Florida in CCS with these rosters, respectively. Florida, their defense cannot handle pressure, as we've seen in the past in big-time games. So I'm going to take the Tigers in 3.
All right. I can see it.
Moving along, staying in the SEC, though, unbeaten Oklahoma takes on unbeaten Tennessee. Give me the Vols in 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that just because it's Joe Bro, it's going to go to 5. He'll find a way. Oklahoma, Oklahoma's undefeated. They haven't impressed me too much with their competition.
Yeah,
I think that
agree.
UTK is going to be a big step up from the teams that they've had to play, because they've had to play what, LSU, Georgia, and Auburn. Who else have they had to play?
Oklahoma has played LSU, Georgia, Alabama, and Arkansas.
Arkansas. Okay, yeah. No disrespect, I think especially against Alabama, I think Alabama is probably the toughest out of those. I know Georgia can step up to the plate, but I think Alabama always makes series scrappy. But I think UTK is just on a different level of who they've against who they've played so far. I mean, UTK is currently 9-4. They're making series at least somewhat close. I think it'll be 5 just because that's the UTK way. You don't ever have easy wins, and I think Oklahoma's going to be riding high of being 12-1 currently. So yeah, I'll have to take the Volunteers in 5 as well.
Yeah, and moving on to the Big Ten, number 15 Michigan State undefeated takes on unbeaten number 17 Purdue in Week 4. Somber, who do you got? I'm gonna take the Boilermakers in 5.
I want to put a lot of stock in Purdue this season. I really like what I've been seeing out of them. But man, Michigan State has been looking so good though.
4-0 respectively.
Give me. I'm gonna take the Boilermakers as well in 5. But I honestly think that game 5 could be a matchup if it goes there. I think if Michigan State go out to an early lead and it goes to 5, or it'll need to go to 5 if Purdue wants to get anything to get that series. But I think that if it's trading games and you go back and forth and you wind up in a game 5 scenario, it's a toss up. But I'm going to give a slight edge to Purdue, just because of what they've done historically, and this being not Michigan State's main roster. I think that that Purdue's just slightly above them in terms of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, but that Michigan State team still beat Indiana, who took Tennessee to Game 5 overtime. So that's a very good Michigan State team. Purdue's 3-0, Michigan State's 4-0. So they are undefeated respectively. They are 2 of the top teams in the Big Ten, it looks like. And another game that got circled is number 23 Illinois versus number 24 Nebraska. About as close as it can get in the top 25 poll. I've always supported my damn Cornhuskers. I got to do it one more time. Peaceful, I love you, brother. But I'm taking the Cornhuskers in 5.
I feel like I'm gonna make some enemies here, because I too am gonna go Nebraska. I feel like even with them not necessarily winning, they've been showing me some good results, especially that the game against Maryland, taking them to 5. Maryland is an even higher ranked opponent, and they were able to leg it out to a game 5. So I think Nebraska is going to be able to cause an upset here. And Nebraska, again, it's one of those teams in the Big Ten, excuse me, much like Ohio State, where the back half of the season determines what they're going to do in conference championship play, and further probably into the national championship. I think that Nebraska is on the rise. They're going to find a stride here to wrap out the back half of the season. Give me the Cornhuskers in 5.
And that glory run and that momentum could start with a win over Illinois. So it can really, that big win can really get a team going. And still staying in the Big Ten, Indiana takes on Penn State in Week 4. I'll take the Hoosiers in 4 in that one. But again, that's a really tough series. I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State win it. But again, I don't think that team has the mental capacity to hang on in a big series right now. So I'm going to say Indiana wins it.
Yeah, I think so as well. I would even venture to say Indiana in 3, just because they got swept by Illinois. I think that Illinois and Indiana, pretty on par teams. So if you're catching the sweep against Illinois, I think that Indiana, it might go 4, but I'm going to actually I'm going to say that Indiana takes the sweep. I think Penn State is going to be kind of dragging down on themselves after their performance last week, and it's going to take a little bit before they stabilize. I think that Indiana is going to capitalize on that.
Absolutely, and I think again both those teams respectable. They're very good. There's no knock to either of those teams, but I don't, from what I've seen from the past. And again, once you piss off Nitrous, it's all downhill. So I think Indiana is going to get the job done in 3 or 4. I wouldn't be shocked if it's sweep. I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State murder them. I mean, it can go either way. But yeah, I'll take Indiana in that one. Moving on to the American, number 3 UTSA takes number 4 South Florida in battle for 3rd place. In the American, UTSA led by Turintero, South Florida, brand new roster. Again, I don't pay much attention to the American, but I have gotten to watch a couple games off stream, just sitting back and chilling and playing on my Switch and watching some games while I'm just staying it out. So that's what I do at night, by the way, for those who don't know. I just literally sit and watch games and play on my Switch. That's all I do. But I'll take UTSA. I like what I've seen from Turintero and Jack Cecil. Very good roster. They've been fun to watch over the last couple of years. I think this is the season finally where they could get back to the tournament led by Turintero. I'll take the Roadrunners.
I'm actually gonna. I think this is the first time that I'm gonna pick opposite of you. Give me South Florida. They're a team that they can pull off big wins. I don't think that big names on rosters really intimidate them. They play every opponent fairly the same, and it's kind of they're one of those teams where respect in the lobby is earned, not given. I think that South Florida is going to come out here and surprise a little bit and be able to take UTSA down in 4.
I mean, it should be close. Hopefully, we can get that one on stream. USF also does play Charlotte, who's currently in 5th at 1-0. So another opportunity for USF to pull out a big win this week over UCSA and Charlotte. But I don't expect the Bulls to be able to compete with Charlotte. But we'll have to wait and see how that game chooses to play out. But moving along to the Mountain West, we just wrapped up a big game last week. San Diego State swept the Spartans of San Jose State, a big time game there, with BU leading that San Jose State team. There's not really too many big games going on in the Mountain West this week. A lot of games probably should be one-sided. Your best bet to a close game is likely going to be Air Force and Colorado State, but the Falcons should have no problem winning that one. I mean, heck, did you call that game with me against GC White or was that someone else that made the joke of carpet bombing? I don't know if that was you or not.
That was definitely not me.
Then it was Taquito, but long story short, there was a game where Air Force had about 17 demos, I think, and Taquito made a joke saying that they were carpet bombing. It's because they're Air Force. So, that was the total, complete destruction, by the way, of GC White. It was a sweep, and it was not close. Air Force had their way, both on the field, physically, and on the field regularly. So that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, the Mountain West, it really does. Seeing San Jose State, I was really high on them going into last week. I'm getting swept by San Diego, not a surprising result, but I think that you're really going to be looking more towards week 5 for any must catch matchups in the Mountain West. Week 4, like you said, seems like it's going to be pretty one sided across the board. You have you kind of have a couple of middle of the pack teams playing each other versus and then matchups where it's bottom of the conference versus top of the conference. So it should be pretty one sided or at least pretty business as usual in week 4 here for the Mountain West.
I agree. And moving on, Conference USA, unbeaten Kennesaw State takes on unbeaten Louisiana Tech. Both Kennesaw has always kind of respectively been mid in CCS. They haven't really ever been able to really shine. But this season they're looking pretty good. They're unbeaten so far. They knocked off Sam Houston State already. They swept Middle Tennessee State, who unfortunately dropped the league. They beat UTEP. They're about to beat UTEP tomorrow on this very good Kennesaw State team, led by Dylan. LA Tech is storied in CCS as we know it. I think it's close, but I'll take the Bulldogs in 5.
Yeah, I'll have to second that opinion. Bulldogs in 5. Kennesaw State, they're one of those teams where depending on the roster, even outside of their A team, they do have competitive rosters. Outside of Dillon, I'm not too familiar with the other two on the side of Kennesaw. So Louisiana, they were a team that were just outside the cut to make the national championship over the summer. They've been only improving since then. They've only dropped a game so far, with more games played. I think that LA Tech is going to take that in 4.
I agree. I mean, 4 or 5. I mean, I think Kennesaw definitely gets a game. I think that's a
Yeah.
fair adjustment there. But GSU take on James Madison. Both of those two teams are ranked. JMU's got a good team. They're no more pitching, but Monk is back at Georgia State after taking a year off of school. Back with Buddy and Asian Eyes, and that's a very good Panther team at Georgia State. But again, JMU is JMU, and it's hard to bet against them. But I'm gonna do it. Give me the Buds in 5.
Ah, man. Yeah, I hate that you picked them because this is now going to seem like the JMU dogging on them cast. I gotta give me the Buds, man. I think Asian Eyes, Nathan is such an interesting prospect. He is the brainchild of DJ TJ and Buddy, which is a very dangerous person to have just kind of out on the streets. But he's one heck of a Rocket League player, man. And like you also get, I believe they're still getting a little bit of coaching support from TJ as well. So they're a very dangerous team. I think that them with the chemistry that they have, like I said, Buddy and Asian Eyes have great chemistry. Monk coming back to the team, he has great chemistry with Buddy. They've all been kind of gelling there at GSU. I think that is that and the kind of the identity that they've been going for is a little bit more established than the JMU. I think it's gonna go 4. I think JMU gets caught out early and they go down big. They're able to grab a game and then Buds bring it back and they're able to steal it earlier than 5. I would not be surprised if it goes to 5, but I think that JMU, they're still finding their footing. They're still trying to find a system that works for them. They looked really great last week on their Night Lights show match against Shawnee, but Shawnee also is a struggling roster. But yeah, I'd like to take the Buds in this matchup.
Yeah, again, and it's the regular season. These games, again, they do hold their own weight and their own, but again, you are going to get a chance for a rematch in the conference tournament. So, if JMU does fall, it's not the end of the world. They're going to get a second opportunity, so you don't have to panic if you are JMU. But again, these games are all close, and as we wrap up the show at the top of the hour here, Somber, close down episode 3. I mean, again, we broke down the transfer portal with Decagon heading to Grand Canyon from Omaha. We looked at the top 25 rankings. We went through a couple of the bigger Power Conference standings. We talked about a lot of the bigger games happening this week. But I think, again, the game of the week, it's got to be Missouri versus Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all the matches that we brought up so far are going to be can't miss Rocket League. We're going to try our best to get all of those on broadcast. But yeah, I think Mizzou, Florida, clash of SEC Titans, 2 giant name schools, 2 giant fan bases that ride or die behind their team. Florida started off slow. They're getting a little bit of their swagger back. Mizzou has jumped in from taking a break during the summer to now coming into the fall and has been absolutely dominant through and through. That's going to be a great matchup between two big name premier teams here for CCS.
And what a hell of a game it would be in the swamp. Imagine at halftime of a Florida game in the swamp, Missouri versus Florida would be cinema. But nonetheless, again, thank you guys for all coming and watching. As always, appreciate your support. We hope to see you on several broadcasts this week through the course of the season. It's going to be exciting, fun time to keep up with CCS. If you're just new here, now is the perfect time to start tuning in and watching some high-level Rocket League at the collegiate level. Thanks for watching. We'll see y'all next time.